The shadow rising. The humid Carolina air clung to Fort Liberty like a suffocating blanket as moonlight cast stark shadows across the training grounds. 7 men emerged from the darkness, dragging a bound woman toward the central memorial. Her wrists were raw from the restraints, but her emerald eyes burned with a fury that should have warned them of what was coming. These were Delta Force operators, America's most elite soldiers, yet they moved with the cruel arrogance of bullies who had never been challenged by someone they deemed inferior. Commander Ryan Stone's voice carried the edge of a man who had never accepted defeat. "Time you learned where you belong," he whispered, his words dripping with contempt. "Special operations isn't a place for your kind." They secured her to the monument with military-grade rope, the kind designed for prisoner transport in hostile territories. Professional knots, impossible to escape, or so they believed. The woman, Captain Sarah Blake, remained silent as they finished their work. Her stillness was more unsettling than any protest would have been. She studied the American flag hanging motionless above, then returned her gaze to her tormentors. Something shifted in her posture, a gathering of energy, a focus that transformed her from victim to predator. Her muscles coiled, the ropes began to strain. One man stopped laughing. The fibers snapped with sounds like distant gunshots. Before they could react, she was free and moving like liquid death. The first attacker collapsed from a precise throat strike. The second went down when his knee bent in directions nature never intended. The remaining 5 reached for weapons that weren't there. They had come expecting to humiliate, not to fight a war. They never stood a chance. 15 years later, the windswept plains of Wyoming's Silver Creek Valley stretched beneath an endless sky. To passing travelers, it appeared as another peaceful farming community, unremarkable and eternal. They couldn't see what lay hidden 30 miles north. Warren Air Force Base, home to a significant portion of America's nuclear deterrent. The proximity was no coincidence for those who understood strategic positioning. Elena Rodriguez understood this better than most, though she never spoke of such matters. At 38, she presented the image of a successful rancher who had abandoned corporate life for rural tranquility. Her 400-acre spread, Morning Star Ranch, occupied the valley's western edge. The reality was that Elena had purchased the property with cash 5 years earlier, a transaction that raised eyebrows among local real estate professionals. She moved with purpose during her dawn perimeter walks, her athletic frame betraying both her age and supposed occupation. Standing 5'8" with raven hair typically secured in a practical braid, her most striking features were those penetrating green eyes that missed nothing. The local community had gradually accepted her, as rural areas do with newcomers who respect tradition. When asked about her past, Eleanor offered the same practiced response. Corporate risk management back east needed a change of scenery. Vague enough to discourage questions, plausible enough to avoid suspicion. What Silver Creek's residents couldn't see was Elena's pre-dawn routine. In a reinforced basement beneath her barn, accessible through a hidden entrance requiring biometric verification and a 16-digit code, she maintained a training facility that would impress military special operators. Every morning at 4:30, she ran 8 miles across her property, followed by 90 minutes of strength training, combat drills, and marksmanship practice. Sheriff David Martinez had noticed more than most. At 62, the former Marine retained observational skills honed through 3 deployments in Iraq. He'd watched Eleanor catch a falling whiskey bottle without seeming to look, reflexes that spoke of training beyond what any risk management consultant would possess. "Impressive reflexes," he'd commented at the local tavern. "Just lucky," she'd replied with that practiced smile. Martinez hadn't pressed. He recognized compartmentalized behavior when he saw it. Whatever Elena Rodriguez was hiding, she wasn't causing trouble in his jurisdiction. That was sufficient, until the Pentagon announcement changed everything. The news arrived through official channels, then spread through the community like wildfire. The Department of Defense had designated land adjacent to Silver Creek Valley for a new advanced training facility. The press release described it as essential infrastructure for next-generation defensive capabilities, with construction beginning within 60 days. At the town hall meeting that followed, Elena sat in the back row, her face a careful mask as she studied the military representatives, only her white knuckles betraying any emotion. That evening, driving home along darkening country roads, her headlights caught a black SUV with government plates parked near her property entrance. She slowed, evaluating, then continued past, as if she hadn't noticed. A mile down the road, she pulled onto a maintenance track, killed her lights, and doubled back on foot through dense woods bordering her land. 20 minutes later, she observed two men in civilian clothes examining her front gate. Their posture, scanning patterns, and subtle hand signals identified them as hunters, not bureaucrats. Men like these had been pursuing her for years, though never so boldly. Whatever was happening in Silver Creek had changed the rules of engagement. She retreated silently, circled wide, and entered through a concealed access point half a mile from the main entrance. Once inside, she activated enhanced security protocols and opened her laptop. Time to discover who had found her and why they'd chosen now to make their move. 3 days after the town hall meeting, a military convoy rolled into Silver Creek Valley. Unlike the unmarked vehicles that had been surveilling Elena's property, these bore full official markings, 4 Humvees and a black Suburban with small Pentagon flags. Word spread quickly. By evening, the Silver Dollar Saloon buzzed with speculation about the newcomers. "Military brass," reported Tom Wilson, who owned the hardware store. 4 officers and a dozen soldiers, all looking like they eat steel for breakfast. Elena sat at the bar's end, nursing whiskey and absorbing every detail of the conversations around her. When the door opened and a distinguished man in his late 60s entered, the room fell momentarily silent. He wore expensive civilian clothes, but carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of high military command. His silver hair was cut in traditional military style. Elena didn't turn to look directly, but the mirror behind the bar allowed her to observe without being obvious. Cold recognition passed through her, carefully concealed behind another sip of whiskey. Colonel Marcus Iron Horse Davidson, former commander of Delta Force, the man who had recruited her 15 years ago, the man who was supposed to be dead. Davidson scanned the room with practiced ease, his gaze pausing fractionally on Elena's back. If he recognized her, he gave no obvious sign. He approached the bar, taking a stool 3 spaces down. "Bourbon, neat," he told the bartender. His voice carried the gravelly texture of command, and too many cigarettes. For 20 minutes, Davidson sipped his drink, engaging in casual conversation with locals who approached to welcome him. His charm was practiced, professional, disarming. Elena finished her drink, left cash on the bar, and headed for the door without acknowledging him. Outside in the parking lot, she unlocked her truck, then paused, sensing rather than hearing his approach. "Beautiful evening," Davidson said, stopping a respectful distance behind her. "Stars seem brighter here than back east." Elena turned slowly. "Can I help you?" "I think perhaps we might help each other. Mind if we talk?" "I don't know what you mean." Davidson glanced around the empty lot. "Somewhere we might speak privately. I assure you, if I meant harm, I wouldn't approach you in a public venue." Elena assessed him carefully. The colonel she had known was a patriot, ruthless when necessary, but never without honor. If he had somehow survived the attack in Baghdad that had reportedly killed him, there had to be reasons for maintaining the deception and now for breaking cover. "Follow me to my place," she said finally. "Stay at least a quarter-mile back. If I see another vehicle behind you, or if you make any calls, I'll disappear before you reach my property." 20 minutes later, they sat at Elena's kitchen table, 2 mugs of black coffee between them. Neither had touched their drinks. "You're looking well for a dead man," Elena opened. "Likewise, Captain Blake," he replied, using her former rank and name. "Or is it Major now? I lost track after the incident. It's just Elena now. Elena Rodriguez, simple rancher." Davidson's laugh was short and humorless. "We both know there's nothing simple about you, Sarah, or about this situation." The use of her real first name, unheard for nearly a decade, sent an involuntary chill through her. She controlled her reaction, maintaining neutrality. "Why are you here, Marcus? The official story said you died in that compound in Baghdad. Sometimes it's convenient for certain people to be dead, as you well know." Davidson's weathered hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "I've been operating off the book since then, special projects oversight on sensitive operations. The kind of work requiring someone with no official existence. And now you're here in my valley, with a Pentagon security detail and plans for a mysterious training facility. I don't believe in coincidences, Colonel. Nor should you." Davidson leaned forward. "What do you know about Project Valkyrie?" Elena's pulse quickened, though her expression remained impassive. Project Valkyrie, the classified program that had shaped her life, then nearly ended it. "It was disbanded after Baghdad," she said carefully, "after the failure." Davidson shook his head slowly. "That's the official story. The truth is more complicated. The Pentagon is reactivating Valkyrie with significant modifications. The world has changed. The threats have evolved. There's a new generation of female operators being recruited and trained. What does this have to do with me? I'm out. Have been for years. The facility they're building here isn't just a training center. It's going to be Valkyrie's new headquarters. The entire program is being rebuilt from the ground up." Davidson paused. "And Silver Creek wasn't chosen by accident." "Someone knows you're here, Sarah." Elena's hand moved imperceptibly closer to the kitchen drawer where she kept a Sig Sauer P320. "Who?" "That's what I'm trying to determine. My official role is overseeing facility development, but my actual mission is finding out who's compromised the program." His eyes locked with hers. "There's something else. Blackwater knows you're here." The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Blackwater Strategic Solutions, the private military company founded by Ryan Stone after his dishonorable discharge from Delta Force. The man whose humiliation at Fort Liberty had set in motion events that destroyed her military career and left most of her team dead. "Stone is dead," she said flatly. "He died in that Syria explosion in 2018. Did he? Or did he, like us, find it convenient to be presumed dead?" Davidson reached into his jacket, moving slowly to avoid alarming her. He withdrew a flash drive and placed it on the table. "Everything I have is here. Intelligence suggests Blackwater has operatives moving into position around Silver Creek. Whatever they're planning centers on the new Valkyrie facility and possibly on you." Elena stared at the flash drive but didn't touch it. "Why should I trust you? For all I know, you could be working with them." "Because I lost 6 good women in Baghdad when the mission went sideways," Davidson replied, rare emotion breaking through his professional demeanor. "Because whatever else has changed, I still believe in what Valkyrie was supposed to be. America's best female operators doing jobs no one else could do. And because if I'm right about what's happening, we're both in serious danger." After Davidson left, Eleanor sat motionless at her kitchen table for nearly an hour, the untouched flash drive before her like a live grenade. Finally, she rose and moved to the living room, where an antique grandfather clock stood against the wall. She opened the clock face, reached past the pendulum, and pressed a concealed button. With a soft click, a section of hardwood flooring recessed and slid aside, revealing a hidden compartment. From within, Eleanor retrieved a small metal box secured with a biometric lock. Her thumbprint opened it, revealing contents she hadn't looked at in years. Military identification tags bearing the name Sarah Blake, a worn challenge coin from Delta Force, and a specialized combat knife with Phoenix engraved on the blade. Her operational call sign from the Valkyrie program. Beneath these lay a photograph. 7 women in desert combat gear, standing before a Black Hawk helicopter in an undisclosed location. Their faces showed the confidence of elite operators and the bond of a unit that had faced death together. 6 of those women were now dead. Elena, Sarah, was the 7th. She returned the items to the box, but kept the knife, testing its familiar weight. Then she took Davidson's flash drive to her secure laptop and began reviewing its contents. By dawn, she knew everything was about to change. Again, Blackwater Strategic Solutions had built its reputation in the shadowy world of private military contracting during the height of Middle Eastern conflicts. Founded by former Delta Force operator Ryan Stone, the company specialized in operations too sensitive for official military forces. Stone's career in Delta had ended following allegations of excessive force against prisoners in Iraq, but his Washington connections had insulated him from prosecution. Instead, he had leveraged his special operations background into a lucrative private venture, securing contracts worth hundreds of millions from the Department of Defense, CIA, and various foreign governments. The reality, as Elena discovered from Davidson's files, was far more disturbing. Blackwater had been implicated in numerous black operations, assassinations disguised as insurgent attacks, weapons trafficking, even targeting journalists who asked too many questions. Nothing had been proven, but the pattern was clear to anyone with clearance to see the full picture. Stone himself had reportedly died in 2018 when his convoy struck an IED outside Damascus. His body had never been recovered, a fact that seemed much more significant now. 3 days after Davidson's visit, the first Blackwater personnel arrived in Silver Creek Valley. They came in black suburban SUVs with tinted windows and private plates, checking into the valley's second-best hotel, the Pine Lodge Inn. Unlike the military personnel who had preceded them, these men made no effort to engage with the local community. They moved in groups, wore tactical clothing poorly disguised as outdoor gear, and conducted what appeared to be reconnaissance operations throughout the valley. Sheriff Martinez noticed when 3 Blackwater contractors entered the county clerk's office requesting property records for the entire valley. Martinez made it his business to know. He found Elena that afternoon inspecting an irrigation pump at the edge of her wheat field. "Afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez," he called as he approached, his patrol SUV parked on the access road. "Got a minute?" Eleanor straightened, wiping her hands on her jeans. She'd been aware of his vehicle since it turned onto her property, but had continued her work, maintaining her cover as a simple rancher. Martinez removed his hat, running a hand through thinning gray hair. His weathered face was serious beneath customary small-town politeness. "Thought you might want to know we've got some new visitors in town. Private security types asking a lot of questions. They seem particularly interested in property boundaries around here." He paused. "Including yours." Elena maintained a neutral expression. "Any idea who they're working for?" "They claim to be advanced security for the military project, company called Blackwater." Martinez watched her face carefully. "Name mean anything to you?" For a split second, Elena considered maintaining her cover, but something in Martinez's eyes told her he already suspected she wasn't who she claimed to be. More importantly, if Blackwater was openly operating in Silver Creek, the situation was deteriorating faster than anticipated. She might need allies. "Let's talk in the house," she said finally. Inside, over coffee that Martinez actually drank, Eleanor chose her words carefully. "I wasn't always a rancher, Sheriff." "No, ma'am, I don't suppose you were." Martinez's tone was respectful but direct. "Don't need to know all the details, but I'm guessing military, intelligence, maybe special operations. The way you move, those reflexes, seen it before." Elena nodded slightly, neither confirming nor denying. "What can you tell me about Blackwater?" she asked. "Bad news," Martinez said flatly. "Had a run-in with them in Iraq during my last deployment. I was advising Iraqi police in Baghdad in '07. Blackwater had a contract for VIP protection. One of their teams opened fire in a crowded market, killed 14 civilians, claimed they were responding to insurgent fire, but none of the locals heard shots before Blackwater started shooting." He took another sip of coffee. "There were rumors they had a black site too, somewhere outside the green zone where they'd take persons of interest for enhanced interrogation. Nothing was ever proven, but—" He shook his head. "Men with that much power and that little oversight, it's a bad combination." "Did you ever encounter their founder, Ryan Stone?" Something dark flickered across Martinez's face. "Once. Arrogant bastard. The kind who joined special forces for the license to kill, not to serve." He studied Elena. "You had dealings with him." "Our paths crossed," Elena said, her voice carefully controlled. "It didn't end well." Martinez nodded, asking no further questions about her past. Instead, he said, "My son Carlos served in Iraq. Marine Force Recon. In 2009, he was assigned to a joint task force that included some Blackwater contractors. He reported irregularities in their operations, weapons disappearing, unauthorized interrogations. 3 weeks later, he died in what they called a training accident. Helicopter crash during a night exercise. The pain in his voice was still raw after all these years. The investigation cleared Blackwater of any involvement, but Carlos had sent me letters. He knew something was wrong with that outfit. Martinez's weathered hands tightened around his coffee mug. "Never could prove anything, but I know who's responsible for my boy's death." Elena felt a deepening chill. If Blackwater had indeed killed Martinez's son to silence him, they were even more dangerous than she'd realized. "Sheriff, if Blackwater is here, it's not to provide security for a military installation. Whatever they're planning isn't official, and it's not good." She leaned forward. "I need to know everything they do, where they go, who they talk to, any equipment they bring in." "You planning on taking them on yourself?" Martinez asked, his expression skeptical despite obvious respect for her capabilities. "I'm planning on staying alive," Elena replied, "and keeping this community safe if I can." After Martinez left, Elena secured her property and drove into town, taking an indirect route and employing counter-surveillance techniques to ensure she wasn't followed. At the local general store, she purchased ordinary supplies while observing 4 Blackwater contractors lounging outside the diner across the street. They were trying to look casual, but their hyper-vigilance was obvious to her trained eye. One man in particular caught her attention, tall, with a distinctive scar running along his jawline. She'd seen that scar before in the files Davidson had provided. Michael Torres, former Army Ranger turned Blackwater operator, Stone's second-in-command for the past 8 years. If Torres was here, Stone couldn't be far behind. That night, Elena accessed a secure satellite phone she kept for emergencies. The device was virtually untraceable, using complex encryption and bouncing signals through multiple satellites before reaching its destination. She dialed a number from memory. After 3 rings, a female voice answered. "Reference desk? I need information on the 1944 agricultural report for Wyoming," Elena said, reciting the prearranged code phrase that hadn't been used in years. A pause. "Sarah." The voice lost its professional detachment, replaced by surprise and concern. "Hello, Lisa," Elena replied. "We need to talk about Valkyrie and Blackwater." "Jesus Christ," the woman breathed. "Where are you?" "You know I can't tell you that, but they've found me, which means my location is already compromised." "Who's they?" "Blackwater, Stone. Davidson says they're planning something involving the new Valkyrie facility." "Davidson? Marcus Davidson? He's dead." "Apparently not," Elena said. "And if he survived Baghdad, it raises questions about who else might have." Another pause, longer this time. "What do you need?" "Everything you have on Blackwater's current operations, personnel, equipment, particularly anything connected to Project Valkyrie or Silver Creek Valley, Wyoming. And Lisa, this stays between us. If anyone else in the agency asks, this call never happened." "You're asking me to risk my career?" "My life, possibly." "I'm asking you to help prevent another Baghdad," Elena said, her voice hardening. 6 women died because someone betrayed Valkyrie. If it happens again, the body count will be much higher. After ending the call, Elena moved to the window, staring out at the dark Wyoming landscape. In the distance, Silver Creek's lights twinkled like earthbound stars, each representing people who had no idea of the danger converging on their peaceful community. For 5 years, she had maintained her cover as Elena Rodriguez, living quietly, building a new life far from her past's shadows. Now that cover was compromised and the threat she had been running from was closing in. Fort Liberty, North Carolina, 2009. The pre-dawn air hung heavy with humidity as 20 candidates assembled on the training ground. 19 men and 1 woman, all accomplished soldiers with multiple combat deployments. All volunteers for a program so classified its very existence would be denied by the Pentagon. Captain Sarah Blake stood at rigid attention, her 5'8" frame seeming smaller beside the special operations males who dominated the formation. At 33, she was older than most candidates, a necessity given the experience required for selection. Her raven hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform immaculate despite sweat already soaking through the fabric in the North Carolina summer heat. Colonel Marcus Davidson paced before them, his voice carrying across the empty training ground. "You've all been selected because you represent the best your respective units have to offer. Rangers, Green Berets, MARSOC, Air Force Special Tactics." He paused, eyes resting briefly on Sarah. "And select intelligence personnel with operational experience." The men shifted slightly, a few glancing sideways at the sole woman in their ranks. Sarah kept her gaze fixed forward, her face expressionless. She'd endured worse than skeptical looks during her 12 years in the army. "What you're about to undertake is unlike any training program in United States military history," Davidson continued. "Project Valkyrie has been authorized at the highest levels to address a critical capability gap in our Special Operations Forces." He gestured to a senior NCO who distributed thick folders to each candidate. "These materials are classified top secret. They do not leave the secure facility. They are not discussed outside this group. Violation of these protocols will result in immediate dismissal and potential criminal charges. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir." The response came in unison. "Inside these folders, you will find the operational concept for Project Valkyrie. In simple terms, we are creating a new special operations capability focusing on female operators for deployment in environments where traditional special operations forces cannot effectively operate due to cultural, religious, or practical constraints." Murmurs rippled through the male candidates. Sarah remained stone-faced, though her pulse quickened. This was what she had been working toward for years, the opportunity to prove that women could serve effectively in direct combat roles, particularly in regions where gender restrictions limited male operators' access. "Captain Blake," Davidson said, "is our primary candidate for the program. The rest of you have been selected to assist in developing training protocols and operational parameters. You will help build this program from the ground up, ensuring that when we select additional female candidates, they receive training that meets or exceeds the standards of your own units." One of the men, a Navy SEAL lieutenant commander with Stone on his uniform, stepped forward. "Sir, permission to speak freely." "Granted, Commander Stone." "With all due respect, sir, special operations standards exist for a reason. Physical requirements can't simply be—" "The standards will not be lowered, Commander." Davidson cut him off sharply. "They will be adapted to the specific operational requirements of Valkyrie personnel. Captain Blake has already passed selection criteria equivalent to Phase 1 of your own training program." Stone's jaw tightened visibly. "Equivalent isn't the same as identical, sir." "You're right, Commander. In some aspects, Valkyrie's requirements are more demanding than SEAL training. Captain Blake speaks 5 languages, including Pashto and Arabic. She can pass as a local woman in multiple operational theaters, where your beard and physique would immediately mark you as an outsider. She completed 4 combat deployments with Army intelligence, including direct action operations alongside Rangers in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Davidson stepped closer to Stone. "Your expertise is valuable to this program, Commander. Your prejudice is not. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Stone replied, though the tension in his posture suggested otherwise. The next 7 weeks were the most physically and mentally demanding of Sarah's career. The training combined elements from every elite military program: SEAL physical training, Green Beret cultural and language immersion, Delta Force close quarters combat, and specialized techniques developed specifically for female operators. The male candidates, initially skeptical, gradually developed respect for Sarah's capabilities, with one notable exception. Commander Ryan Stone remained openly hostile, challenging her at every opportunity, attempting to expose weaknesses that would disqualify her from the program. On the 45th day of training, Davidson announced a marksmanship competition. Stone achieved an impressive grouping at 800 meters, despite challenging crosswinds. His smirk, as he stepped away from the firing position, said everything. He expected Sarah to fail where he had excelled. Instead, Sarah calmly adjusted her rifle, calculated wind variables, controlled her breathing, and placed 5 shots in a tighter grouping than Stone had managed. At 1,000 meters, she repeated the performance. At 1,200 meters, the maximum effective range of the weapon system they were using, she maintained her accuracy, while Stone's final shot missed the target zone entirely. "Lucky conditions," he muttered as she returned to the staging area. "There's no luck in physics, Commander," she replied quietly. "Just mathematics and proper execution." That night, Sarah was working late in the Tactical Operations Center, reviewing mission scenarios for the program. When she finally left at 0100 hours, the compound was quiet, most personnel having returned to barracks hours earlier. As she passed between buildings, shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. 6 men in tactical gear with faces obscured by balaclavas surrounded her. Before she could react, a hood was forced over her head, and strong hands restrained her. They moved quickly, professionally, clearly military trained. Despite her struggles, they subdued her with practiced efficiency. No one spoke as they half-dragged, half-carried her across the compound. When the hood was removed, she found herself at the base of the central flagpole on the parade ground, far from any occupied buildings where calls for help might be heard. The men still wore balaclavas, but Sarah recognized Stone's distinctive build and the way he carried himself. "What's this about, Commander?" she asked, her voice steady despite her vulnerable position. Stone stepped closer. Just a little tradition we have for people who don't know their place. Special operations isn't a world for women, no matter what political games the Pentagon is playing. So this is about your bruised ego because I outshot you. The backhand came without warning, snapping her head to the side. Sarah tasted blood, but didn't make a sound. "Restrain her," Stone ordered. "Make sure it's tight. I want her still hanging here when morning formation arrives." They bound her to the flagpole with thick manila rope, the kind used in maritime operations, Stone's specialty. The knots were professional, each loop tightening against her body, restricting movement and eventually making breathing difficult. Her hands were secured behind the pole, the rope cutting into her wrists. "How's that feel, Captain?" Stone asked, his voice low and menacing. "Still think you belong in our world?" Sarah said nothing, conserving energy, analyzing the restraints. The ropes were standard Navy issue, tested to hold against ocean conditions. But they hadn't been designed to withstand techniques developed by her previous instructor, a former Spetsnaz operator who had defected to the West, bringing with him the Soviet military's advanced escape methods. The men finished securing her and stepped back, admiring their work. Stone approached once more. "By morning, everyone will see what happens when standards are compromised for political correctness. Maybe then, the colonel will understand that some traditions exist for a reason." He turned to leave, his companions following. "Commander," Sarah called quietly. Stone paused, turning back. "You should have used better rope." Before he could respond, Sarah activated the specialized muscle control techniques she had learned, tensing and relaxing specific muscle groups in rapid sequence, creating space between the ropes and her body while simultaneously applying maximum pressure at key stress points. The ropes began to creak. Stone's eyes widened behind his balaclava. With a series of sharp, snapping sounds, the manila fibers gave way. Stone and his men reached for weapons that weren't there. They hadn't brought firearms for what they'd assumed would be a simple hazing ritual. Their mistake. Sarah moved with fluid precision, leveraging her specialized close-quarters combat training. The first man went down with a precision strike to the throat. The second collapsed from a devastating blow to the knee, both debilitating injuries, but carefully calculated to be non-lethal. The remaining four, including Stone, attempted to subdue her through numerical advantage. In the darkness of the parade ground, the scene played out like choreographed violence, Sarah evading, striking, using the men's size and strength against them. Within 90 seconds, 5 of the 6 men lay incapacitated on the ground. Only Stone remained standing, blood streaming from his nose, where one of her strikes had connected. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing away. "Yes, Commander," Sarah replied calmly. "It is." The incident was reported to Colonel Davidson the next morning. Despite Stone's denials, the evidence was irrefutable. Security cameras had captured the abduction, though footage of the parade ground itself was conveniently corrupted. Stone and 2 of his accomplices were immediately removed from Project Valkyrie. Official records indicated they were reassigned to other duties, but rumors suggested more severe consequences had been considered until high-placed connections intervened on Stone's behalf. What no one in the program could have anticipated was that the incident had created something far more dangerous than a failed hazing ritual. It had created an enemy with the skills, resources, and pathological determination to destroy not just Sarah Blake, but the entire Valkyrie program. An enemy who would wait years for his opportunity for revenge. The Wyoming sunrise painted Silver Creek Valley in amber and gold as Elena completed her morning security sweep. After discovering Blackwater's presence in town, she had doubled her vigilance, rising even earlier to check the perimeter sensors she had installed across her property. She was inspecting the irrigation system in her eastern field when she spotted approaching vehicles. 3 black SUVs moving slowly along the county road toward her main gate. Even at this distance, Elena recognized the distinctive profile of the lead vehicle. A modified Suburban with reinforced chassis and ballistic glass. Blackwater's signature transport for high-value personnel. They had arrived sooner than expected. Elena straightened, brushing soil from her hands with deliberate casualness. To any observer, she appeared to be nothing more than a rancher interrupted during morning work. But beneath this practiced calm, her mind calculated distances, angles, and response options should the situation deteriorate. The convoy stopped at her gate. 4 men emerged from the vehicles wearing tactical pants and light windbreakers that almost certainly concealed body armor and sidearms. The last man to exit the lead SUV moved with the confident authority of someone accustomed to command. Even without the beard he'd worn during his SEAL days, Ryan Stone was unmistakable. The same cold eyes, the same predatory posture. 15 years had added gray to his temples, but had done nothing to diminish the aura of controlled violence that surrounded him. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she called, pitching her voice to carry across the distance. Stone stepped forward, raising expensive sunglasses to rest on his head. "Miss Rodriguez, Elena Rodriguez, that's right." She continued her approach, stopping at a distance of about 30 meters, close enough for conversation, far enough to react if threatened. Ryan Stone, Blackwater Strategic Solutions. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're conducting security assessments for the new Department of Defense facility. May we have a moment of your time?" No recognition in his voice or manner. Either he truly didn't recognize her as Sarah Blake, or he was a better actor than she remembered. Elena suspected the latter. "I wasn't aware the Pentagon had outsourced security to private contractors," she replied, maintaining her cover as an informed but ordinary citizen. Stone's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "The world's changed, Ms. Rodriguez. Public-private partnerships are the new normal in defense infrastructure." He gestured to the land around them. "You've got quite a spread here, prime location too." "It suits me." "I imagine it does." Stone nodded appreciatively, though his eyes continued their predatory assessment. "We're particularly interested in properties bordering the proposed facility site. Yours is of special interest due to its elevation and proximity to water resources." Elena crossed her arms. "Are you here to make an offer, Mr. Stone?" Smart woman. Stone smiled again, this one calculated to appear warm and reasonable. "The Department of Defense is prepared to make a very generous offer for your property, well above market value." "I'm not interested in selling." Stone's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a coiling of potential energy like a snake preparing to strike. "Perhaps you should consider the broader implications before making that decision." "Implications. National security, Ms. Rodriguez. The facility being built here will play a critical role in America's defense infrastructure. Private concerns sometimes need to yield to the greater good." "Last I checked, this was still America," Elena replied evenly. "Private property rights still means something even to the government." One of Stone's men, Michael Torres, the one with the scar along his jawline, leaned in and whispered something in Stone's ear. Stone nodded slightly, his gaze intensifying as he studied Elena with renewed interest. "Of course," Stone said, his tone shifting to something smoother, more dangerous. "No one's suggesting otherwise, but there are legal mechanisms, eminent domain for instance, that could come into play. The process can be challenging for property owners. Lengthy court battles, frozen assets while litigation proceeds. The threat was clear, though carefully phrased to maintain plausible deniability. Elena had expected nothing less. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Stone, but I'm comfortable with my decision." She gestured toward the gate. "Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." Stone held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. "Of course. Sorry to have disturbed your morning." He reached into his jacket, producing a business card that he extended toward the fence. "In case you reconsider." Elena approached and took the card, careful to avoid any physical contact. Up close, she could see the barely concealed scrutiny in Stone's eyes, searching for something familiar, some confirmation of his suspicions. "Some people don't understand when it's time to cooperate with their government, Ms. Rodriguez," Stone said quietly. "It rarely ends well for them." "Is that a threat, Mr. Stone?" "Just an observation based on experience." His smile returned, cold and professional. "We'll be in touch." As the Blackwater convoy departed, Elena remained by the fence, watching until they disappeared from view. Only then did she examine Stone's business card. Standard corporate information on the front, blank on the back. She slipped it into her pocket and returned to the irrigation system she'd been inspecting. 20 minutes later, satisfied that no one was watching, she retrieved a handheld electronic device from a concealed pocket in her work jacket and ran it over the business card. The scanner's display confirmed her suspicion. The card contained an embedded RFID tracking chip designed to monitor her movements as long as she carried it. Amateur tradecraft by her standards. Stone was testing her, seeing if she would detect such a basic surveillance technique. Elena placed the card inside a signal-blocking pouch and continued her work. Let him think his ploy had succeeded for now. That night, Elena sat in darkness on her front porch, night vision monocular raised to her right eye as she scanned her property's perimeter. The irrigation system had stopped working hours after Stone's visit. Sabotage, clearly, though done skillfully enough to appear as mechanical failure to an untrained observer. Movement caught her attention. Two figures approaching through the wheat field from the west, using terrain for concealment. Their movement patterns betrayed military training, though not top tier. They carried what appeared to be compact submachine guns, likely MP7s, with sound suppressors. Elena watched them advance to within 100 meters of the farmhouse before slipping inside. She moved silently through the darkened building to her bedroom, where she retrieved the Sig Sauer P320 from her nightstand and attached the suppressor with practiced efficiency. Then she positioned herself in the kitchen shadows, watching through the window as the intruders approached the back door. The lock yielded to their ministrations. They'd come prepared with bypass tools. The door swung inward silently, and the first man entered with weapon at low ready, using proper room-clearing technique. The second followed moments later, covering the opposite sector. Eleanor let them move further into the house, listening to their whispered communication as they searched the ground floor. "She's supposed to be alone," the first man murmured. "Just do the job and get out," his partner replied. "Stone wants her scared, not dead." That confirmed what Eleanor had already suspected. This wasn't an assassination attempt, but an intimidation tactic. Stone was escalating, gradually testing her responses. She could eliminate both intruders with minimal effort, but that would force Stone to reveal his true intentions sooner than she preferred. Better to handle this in a way that maintained her cover while sending a clear message. Elena waited until they separated, then moved. She approached the first intruder from behind, Sig Sauer held out of sight against her leg. With practiced precision, she struck the pressure point at the base of his skull with her free hand, causing momentary disorientation. Before he could recover, she had disarmed him, removed the magazine from his weapon, and cleared the chamber, all in under 3 seconds. The man spun, reaching for a sidearm, but froze when he felt the cold pressure of Elena's suppressor against his temple. "Don't," she whispered. In the living room, the second intruder called out softly, "Rodriguez, you good?" Eleanor pressed the suppressor more firmly against the first man's head. "Tell him everything's fine." Do it convincingly. All clear here, Rodriguez called, his voice remarkably steady given the circumstances. Just checking the kitchen. Who sent you? Elena demanded in a whisper. You know who, Rodriguez replied, his eyes darting toward his weapon, calculating his chances. Tell Stone that if he sends anyone else to my property, they won't leave alive, Elena said, her voice devoid of emotion. This is your only warning. With a swift, precise movement, she struck him at the junction of neck and shoulder, a nerve cluster that induced temporary paralysis when hit correctly. Rodriguez collapsed to the floor, conscious but unable to move or speak. Elena moved to intercept the second intruder, employing the same efficient takedown technique. Within minutes, both men were incapacitated but unharmed. She dragged them onto the front porch and arranged them in sitting positions against the wall, their weapons disassembled beside them. From Rodriguez's tactical vest, she retrieved a small electronic device, a covert listening system designed to be hidden within the house. Elena leaned close to Rodriguez, whose eyes blazed with impotent fury as his body refused to respond to his commands. The paralysis will wear off in about 20 minutes, she informed him clinically. When it does, take your equipment and leave. Tell Stone that his surveillance device was disappointing, Israeli technology from at least 5 years ago. I expected better from Blackwater. She stood and returned to the house, closing the door behind her. Only then did she allow herself a moment of concern. Stone was moving faster than anticipated, which meant she needed to accelerate her own preparations. Elena retrieved her secure satellite phone and dialed the number for Lisa Chen, her former teammate from the Valkyrie program, who now worked for the CIA. The library is closed, Lisa answered, using their pre-arranged challenge code. But the archives remain open, Elena responded with the correct countersign. Secure channel established, Lisa confirmed. What's happening? Stone made contact today, followed by a night visit from 2 of his men. Casualties? Negative, kept it clean, but he's testing me, escalating faster than expected. A pause on the line, slightly longer than operational protocols would dictate. When Lisa spoke again, there was subtle tension in her voice that Elena's trained ear detected immediately. I've been digging into Blackwater's recent activities. Elena, there's something big happening. They've been purchasing specialized equipment through shell companies, signal jammers, EMP shielding, hardened data storage, the kind of gear you'd need if you were preparing for a blackout. Elena finished, remembering the conversation she'd overheard. Operation Blackout. Whatever they're planning, it's imminent. Days, not weeks. Another pause. There's something else. I found a financial trail linking Blackwater to certain elements within the intelligence community. Be careful who you trust. The warning sent a chill down Elena's spine. Including Davidson? I can't confirm or deny over this channel, Lisa replied, her careful phrasing itself a warning. Just watch your 6. Not everyone is who they claim to be. Sheriff Martinez pulled his patrol SUV into the gravel lot behind the Silver Dollar Saloon, parking beside the dumpsters where his vehicle wouldn't be immediately visible from the road. The saloon was closed on Mondays, which made it the perfect location for the meeting Elena had arranged. Martinez approached the rear entrance, noting the absence of security cameras on this side of the building. The door opened before he could knock. "Sheriff?" Elena greeted him, her expression grave. "Thanks for coming?" "Miss Rodriguez." He followed her inside, where the bar stood dark and silent. "Or should I call you by another name?" Elena's lips tightened briefly. "Elena is fine for now." The main area of the bar was empty, except for a single figure seated at a corner table. Colonel Marcus Davidson, his silver hair catching the dim light filtering through shuttered windows. He rose as they approached, extending his hand to Martinez. "Sheriff Marcus Davidson, Department of Defense." Martinez's handshake was firm but wary. "Colonel, Marine Corps, retired." "I know," Davidson replied. 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, Fallujah, 2004. Distinguished service. Martinez's eyes narrowed slightly. You've done your homework. It's what I do. Davidson gestured to the chairs. Please sit. What we need to discuss requires both discretion and urgency. Once they were seated, Eleanor placed a signal jammer on the table and activated it, creating a secure bubble that would prevent electronic eavesdropping. The device hummed softly as it cycled through frequency bands. What I'm about to share is classified, Eleanor began, her voice low despite the precaution. But circumstances have made operational security a secondary concern. Over the next 15 minutes, she provided a concise briefing on her background with Project Valkyrie, her history with Stone, and the events at Fort Liberty that had initiated their enmity. She explained Blackwater's appearance in Silver Creek and their apparent interest in the planned military facility. 2 nights ago, Stone sent men to my property, she concluded. An intimidation tactic for now, but his operations are accelerating. Martinez absorbed the information with the steady calm of a veteran who had seen combat and chaos before. What exactly do you believe Blackwater is planning? Davidson leaned forward. Based on intelligence we've gathered, Stone appears to be preparing for an operation codenamed Blackout. The details remain unclear, but it involves sophisticated electronic warfare equipment and a significant deployment of personnel. And you believe this is connected to the new military facility? Martinez asked. It has to be, Elena said. The timing is too precise to be coincidence. Stone has harbored a vendetta against Project Valkyrie for 15 years. Now that the program is being reactivated with a new headquarters planned for Silver Creek, he finally has an opportunity for revenge. Martinez's expression darkened. Like he had with my son. Elena and Davidson exchanged glances. Your son? Davidson asked carefully. Carlos Martinez. The sheriff's voice remained steady, though his hands tightened around his coffee mug. Marine Force Recon. Killed in a training accident in Iraq after reporting irregularities in Blackwater's operations. The official investigation cleared them, but I know better. He fixed Davidson with a hard stare. I've spent 11 years trying to prove Blackwater was responsible. 11 years watching Stone's company grow more powerful, more untouchable, while my son's name faded from everyone's memory except mine. Elena studied Martinez with new understanding. His involvement wasn't just professional duty or community protection. It was personal, a father's quest for justice. That made him both a valuable ally and a potential liability if emotion clouded his judgment. Sheriff, she said gently, we need your help. Your knowledge of the valley, your authority as law enforcement, these give you access and capabilities we don't have. But this operation will be dangerous. Stone has resources, manpower, and a complete absence of ethical constraints. Martinez's expression hardened with resolve. Ms. Rodriguez, Elena, my son gave his life trying to expose these people. If there's even a chance to finish what he started, to bring Stone to justice, I'm all in. He paused. But we'll need more than just the 3 of us. I've been considering that, Davidson said. I can request a special operations team, but official channels take time we may not have. Additionally, any such request would generate paperwork that might tip off Stone's contacts in the Pentagon. I wasn't thinking about your special forces, Martinez replied. I was thinking about the men right here in Silver Creek. Elena raised an eyebrow. Local civilians against Blackwater operators. Not just any civilians. A hint of pride entered Martinez's voice. Silver Creek has always had a strong veteran community. We've got former special operators living quiet lives here, men who served with distinction but prefer to keep those days behind them. He pulled out a small notebook and opened it on the table. Frank Morrison, 71, former Green Beret. Served in Panama and the First Gulf War. Runs the hardware store now, but still shoots competitively. Tom Rodriguez, 68, flew Hueys in Vietnam, then Special Operations helicopters until his retirement in '96. Has his own crop dusting business these days. Robert Kim, 63, EOD specialist during Desert Storm. Diffused over 300 IEDs in his career. Teaches chemistry at the high school now. Martinez looked up from his notes. There are others. Men with skills that don't fade, even if their knees aren't what they used to be. Men who would stand up if they knew what was happening here. Davidson appeared skeptical. With all respect to their service, Sheriff, we're talking about men in their 60s and 70s, decades removed from active duty, going up against a private military company with state-of-the-art equipment and training. Age brings wisdom, Colonel, Martinez replied evenly. And unlike your active duty operators, these men have nothing to lose and no chain of command to satisfy. They're also intimately familiar with the terrain. They've hunted these mountains for decades. Elena considered the proposal, weighing tactical realities against Lisa's warning about trust. Using local veterans carried significant risks, but they would be operating outside established channels where potential moles might lurk. Their very unexpectedness could be an advantage. Stone and his people would never anticipate resistance from a group of retirement-age veterans. Let's meet them, she decided, discreetly. We need to assess capabilities and commitment before making any decisions. Martinez nodded. I can arrange that. There's a hunting cabin up in the hills, off the grid. Frank owns it. We can gather there tomorrow night. As they finalized details, Elena's secure phone vibrated. The display showed a message from Lisa. Urgent. New intel on Valkyrie/Blackout. Call secure. I need to take this, Elena said, stepping away from the table. She moved to the bar's kitchen, maintaining line of sight on Davidson and Martinez while establishing sufficient privacy for the call. Lisa answered immediately. We have a serious problem. Go ahead. I've identified Stone's second-in-command for the Silver Creek operation. You're not going to like it. Lisa's voice was grim. It's Jessica Kim. Elena felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. Jessica Kim, her former teammate from the original Valkyrie program, presumed dead after the disaster in Baghdad. That's not possible, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jessica died in Iraq. There was a funeral. There was a strange hesitation on Lisa's end, just a fraction of a second too long. Apparently not. She's operating under the name Maria Santos now. Intelligence confirms she's been with Blackwater for at least 7 years, serving as Stone's right hand. Another pause. Elena, there's more. The records suggest she was working for Stone even before Baghdad. The implications crashed through Elena's mind like breaking glass. If Jessica had been Stone's agent within Valkyrie from the beginning, it would explain how the operation in Baghdad had been compromised so thoroughly. It would explain how 6 highly trained women had walked into a trap that cost them their lives. She betrayed us, Elena said, the words bitter in her mouth. All of us. The evidence suggests as much. Lisa's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, Elena. I know you two were close. Something in Lisa's tone caught Elena's attention, a subtle tension that didn't align with standard operational communication. 7 years was a long time for Jessica to have been working with Stone without intelligence agencies detecting her presence. Either the intelligence community was remarkably incompetent or someone was playing a deeper game. There's something else, Lisa continued, seemingly unaware of Elena's mental calculations. I've uncovered partial details about Operation Blackout. It appears to be a sophisticated cyber attack targeting the Pentagon's secure communications network. The attack will be launched from Silver Creek, using the elevated position and remote location to evade immediate countermeasures. What's the objective? Eleanor asked, forcing her mind back to the immediate threat. That's still unclear, but based on the equipment Blackwater has acquired, they could potentially disrupt military communications across the western United States for at least 12 hours. In that window, they could execute any number of secondary operations without detection or response. Elena's mind raced through the implications. The Valkyrie facility. It's just a cover, isn't it? The Pentagon isn't actually reactivating the program. I can't confirm that, Lisa replied carefully. But I've found no official documentation for a Valkyrie revival. Whatever's happening in Silver Creek, it's operating under extremely compartmentalized protocols. Or it was complete fabrication, a story Davidson had used to draw her out, perhaps as bait for Stone. Elena glanced back at the colonel, reassessing everything he had told her in light of this new information. "Keep digging," she told Lisa. "I need to know exactly what's being built in that valley, and I need to know Stone and Jessica's actual objective. Be careful, Elena. If Jessica is involved, she knows all your tactics, all your procedures. She trained with you. And I know hers," Eleanor replied, though the confidence in her voice felt hollow. The Jessica she had known would never have betrayed her team, which meant either Eleanor had completely misjudged her closest ally, or the woman working with Stone was no longer the same person. Either way, the threat had just become exponentially more dangerous, and the list of people Elena could trust with absolute certainty had shrunk to exactly one: herself. The hunting cabin sat high on a forested ridge overlooking Silver Creek Valley, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that switched back up the mountainside. Built from local timber and fieldstone, it blended into the landscape so effectively that it remained virtually invisible until you were upon it, a feature that had made it popular with generations of local hunters. Tonight, it served a different purpose. Elena arrived first, 2 hours before the scheduled meeting, to secure the perimeter and establish surveillance. She moved through the surrounding forest with practiced stealth, placing motion sensors at strategic points along the access road and footpaths. From a concealed position 50 meters from the cabin, she observed through a thermal scope as Sheriff Martinez arrived on schedule, followed by 5 older men in pickup trucks and SUVs. Only when she was satisfied that they hadn't been followed did Elena approach the cabin, entering through a rear window rather than the main door, a precaution that earned approving nods from the veterans gathered inside. The interior was rustic but comfortable, with a large stone fireplace, solid wooden furniture, and walls adorned with hunting trophies and military memorabilia. A topographical map of Silver Creek Valley dominated one wall, marked with handwritten notes about game movements and hunting blinds. Martinez made the introductions. Frank Morrison, the former Green Beret, was a barrel-chested man with a white beard and calloused hands that spoke of decades of physical labor. Tom Rodriguez, the Vietnam helicopter pilot, was lean and wiry with observant eyes that constantly scanned his surroundings. Robert Kim, the EOD specialist, had the methodical movements and careful speech patterns of a man accustomed to working with precision under pressure. The 2 others were Jim Taylor, a former Army Ranger sniper who now worked as the county surveyor, and George Williams, who had served with Marine Force Recon before becoming Silver Creek's most successful real estate agent. Collectively, they represented over a century of special operations experience, though, as Davidson had pointed out, most of that experience was decades old. "Sheriff Martinez says you need our help," Morrison opened, his voice carrying the gravelly texture of a lifelong smoker. "Said it involves national security and potential threats to Silver Creek." "That's correct," Elena replied, deciding that directness would be the most effective approach with these men. I'm going to share information that's technically classified, but circumstances require immediate action outside normal channels. Over the next 20 minutes, she provided a carefully edited version of the situation, explaining her background with military intelligence, Stone's identity as a rogue security contractor, and Blackwater's apparent plan to use Silver Creek as a base for an attack on military communication systems. She omitted specific references to Project Valkyrie and her personal history with Stone, focusing instead on the immediate threat to both national security and the local community. Blackwater has at least 20 operators in the valley, she concluded, possibly more arriving. They're heavily armed, well-trained, and preparing for some kind of operation within the next 72 hours. The men exchanged glances, decades of military experience, allowing them to communicate volumes without words. Why not call in the FBI, Williams asked, or actual military support? Bureaucracy and time constraints, Davidson answered, speaking for the first time since the briefing began. By the time we navigate official channels, secure necessary authorizations, and deploy appropriate forces, Stone's operation will be complete. Besides, Martinez added, Blackwater has connections in Washington, high-level contacts that have shielded them from scrutiny in the past. Any official request for intervention would likely be flagged and potentially compromised. Morrison stroked his beard thoughtfully. So you're asking a bunch of old war horses to saddle up one more time, go up against professional operators with modern equipment and training. I know it's a lot to ask, Elena acknowledged. The risks are significant. Risk? Rodriguez laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Lady, at our age, the biggest risk is dying in a nursing home with tubes up our noses. At least this way we go out doing something that matters. Kim nodded in agreement. This valley is our home. These people are our neighbors. If this Blackwater outfit is planning something that puts them in danger, I'm in. Same, Taylor said quietly. Always figured I had one more mission in me. Morrison looked at Elena with shrewd assessment. You're not telling us everything. That's clear enough. But I've been reading people for 50 years and I can tell when someone's fighting on the right side. He extended his hand. We're in. Elena shook his hand, feeling the strength still present in his grip despite his age. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Williams cautioned. We need to know what we're up against and what resources we have. Detailed intelligence, weapons, equipment, tactical plans. I've brought what I could, Elena said, opening a duffel bag she'd carried in. She spread several satellite images of Silver Creek Valley on the table, along with blueprints of the construction site for the supposed Valkyrie facility. This is what we know about Blackwater's current positions and the terrain we'll be operating in. The veterans immediately began analyzing the materials, their decades-old training resurfacing as they assessed the tactical situation. What impressed Elena wasn't just their technical knowledge, but the innovative approaches they suggested, unconventional tactics that might not appear in modern special operations playbooks, but could be devastatingly effective in the right circumstances. Standard approach vectors won't work, Morrison observed, tracing a line on the map. They'll have those covered with redundant surveillance. But there's an old hunting trail here, not on any maps. Been using it for 30 years. Comes in behind this ridge, provides concealment right up to within 200 meters of their eastern perimeter. Rodriguez pointed to another location. There's a natural bowl here, perfect for helicopter operations. I could set down with minimal noise signature if I come in low through this canyon. My old Cessna isn't military spec, but she's quiet when I cut the engine for final approach. What about communications? Elena asked. They'll be monitoring standard frequencies. Kim smiled slightly. When I retired, I developed a hobby in software-defined radio. Built a system that frequency hops according to an algorithm based on daily temperature readings from 3 weather stations. Unless they know the exact algorithm and reference points, they'll never crack it. As they worked, Eleanor found herself increasingly impressed with these aging warriors. What they lacked in physical capabilities, they more than compensated for with ingenuity, local knowledge, and the kind of improvisational thinking that came from decades of real-world experience. As they finalized initial preparations, Davidson received a call on his secure phone. His expression darkened as he listened. Understood. Maintain distance and continue observation. He ended the call and turned to the group. That was my contact at the construction site. Blackwater personnel have arrived in force, at least 30 operators with equipment cases and what appears to be electronic warfare gear. Timeline's accelerating, Elena said grimly. They're moving faster than we anticipated. We need to conduct reconnaissance immediately, Williams suggested. Confirm their positions, identify equipment, establish their operational patterns. Agreed, Elena replied. But we need to move carefully. If Stone has brought in Jessica... She caught herself realizing she hadn't briefed the group on this development. Jessica? Martinez asked. Elena exchanged a glance with Davidson, who nodded slightly, an acknowledgement that full disclosure was now necessary. Jessica Kim, Elena explained, former Valkyrie operative presumed dead after a mission went wrong in Iraq. New intelligence suggests she's alive and working for Stone under the name Maria Santos. Your teammate? Davidson asked sharply, though something in his tone struck Elena as performative rather than genuinely surprised. The one who was with you in Baghdad? Yes, and if she's involved, our operational security is compromised from the start. She knows my tactics, my protocols, everything about how I plan and execute missions. The veterans processed this new information with professional gravity, immediately recognizing the strategic implications of facing an adversary with intimate knowledge of their leadership. Then we adapt, Morrison said simply. Use approaches she wouldn't expect from you. We may be old, but we've got a few tricks she won't have seen before. Elena nodded, grateful for the pragmatic response. We'll divide into reconnaissance teams. Sheriff Martinez and I will observe the main construction site. Frank and Tom focus on their command post at the Pine Lodge Inn. Robert and Jim monitor the access roads and identify any security measures they've implemented. George, your real estate connections give you a legitimate reason to move around the valley. See what you can learn about any additional properties they might be using. What about me? Davidson asked. Elena hesitated. Despite working alongside him, she still harbored doubts about Davidson's true agenda. The lack of official documentation for Valkyrie's revival, combined with the convenient timing of his reappearance in her life, raised questions she couldn't ignore. I need you to use your Pentagon credentials to gather any additional intelligence on Blackwater's current operations, she said carefully. Your official status gives you access we don't have. If Davidson recognized the implicit separation from field operations, keeping him at arm's length from their tactical movements, he didn't show it. He simply nodded in agreement. We'll reconvene here at 0600 tomorrow, Elena concluded. Move carefully, maintain communications discipline and avoid engagement. This is reconnaissance only. As the meeting broke up, Elena pulled Sheriff Martinez aside. I need a favor, she said quietly. Something off the books. Martinez raised an eyebrow but nodded. Name it. I need you to have someone watch Davidson discreetly. I'm not fully convinced he's being straight with us about why he's here, or what's actually being built in that valley. The sheriff studied her for a moment, then nodded with a slight smile that surprised her. Already on it. My deputy, former Force Recon, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, has been tailing him since he arrived in town. Standard procedure for all official visitors after what happened to my son. Elena felt a flicker of respect for the sheriff's foresight. And, so far, he's exactly who he claims to be. Makes all the calls you'd expect from someone coordinating with Pentagon brass. Callahan hesitated. But there was one call yesterday to a number my deputy couldn't trace. Secure line, military encryption. Could be legitimate. Could be something else. Trust but verify, Elena said. Oldest rule in the book. Exactly. Martinez's weathered face creased in a brief smile. I'll keep you posted if anything changes. After the others had departed, Elena remained at the cabin, using its elevated position to conduct surveillance of the valley below. Through her high-powered optics, she could see the construction site now surrounded by additional security personnel and temporary structures that hadn't been there 2 days earlier. Movement near the perimeter caught her attention, a female figure directing security arrangements with clear authority. Even at this distance, there was something familiar about her posture and gestures. Elena adjusted the focus, zooming in as much as the optics would allow. The woman turned, her profile now visible in the twilight. Jessica Kim. Older, hair shorter and lighter than Elena remembered, but unmistakably the same woman who had fought alongside her in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. The same woman who had allegedly died in her arms in a blood-soaked safe house in Baghdad. As Elena watched, Jessica paused in her activities, turning slightly to scan the surrounding ridgelines with an almost imperceptible movement. The kind of environmental awareness that had been drilled into both of them during Valkyrie training. For a brief moment, it seemed as though Jessica was looking directly at Elena's position, though the distance and concealment made that impossible. Then, in a gesture so subtle that anyone else would have missed it, Jessica touched her left ear with 2 fingers, then her collar. The signal they had used in Baghdad when communications might be compromised. Be careful. Not secure. Eleanor's breath caught. If Jessica was genuinely a traitor working for Stone, why would she risk sending such a signal? And if she wasn't a traitor, if she was operating under deep cover, who had placed her there? And why hadn't Elena been informed? The web of deception and counter-deception was growing more complex by the hour. Jessica alive and seemingly working for the enemy. Davidson resurrected from the dead with a story about a revived Valkyrie program. Lisa providing intelligence that might be designed to manipulate rather than inform. As darkness fell over Silver Creek Valley, Elena continued her vigil, watching as Blackwater's preparations accelerated under Jessica's supervision. Whatever Operation Blackout entailed, it was clearly imminent. The first battle would be fought in the shadows, a contest of information, preparation, and strategic positioning. And despite the courage and experience of her newly formed alliance, Eleanor harbored no illusions about the difficulty of what lay ahead. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with intimate knowledge of their capabilities. The odds were overwhelming. But Elena Rodriguez, Sarah Blake, had faced impossible odds before. At Fort Liberty, bound to a flagpole, she had demonstrated what determination and proper training could accomplish against seemingly insurmountable constraints. She would do so again. Midnight in Silver Creek Valley brought a silence so profound that Eleanor could hear the whisper of pine needles stirring in the gentle mountain breeze. The moon hung low and heavy, casting silver light across the landscape as she observed the Blackwater compound through her night vision scope. She lay motionless on a rocky outcropping half a mile from the perimeter, cataloguing guard positions, patrol patterns, and security measures with methodical precision. The construction site had been transformed in the past 48 hours. What had begun as a standard government project now resembled a forward operating base in hostile territory. Armed personnel patrolled the perimeter in precise intervals. Portable generators hummed, powering an array of electronic equipment housed in hastily erected modular structures. Directional antennas pointed toward distant horizons, their purpose still unclear but undoubtedly central to Operation Blackout. In her earpiece, Elena heard Frank Morrison's gravelly whisper, "Eagle's Nest is secure." The former Green Beret had positioned himself on the ridge overlooking the eastern approach, providing overwatch with a customized hunting rifle he'd maintained with obsessive care since his retirement. "Copy that," Elena responded softly. "Maintain position." One by one, her improvised team reported in, each using call signs based on local landmarks. Tom Rodriguez had his crop duster fueled and prepared at a private airstrip 10 miles south. Robert Kim had placed his homemade monitoring devices at key locations around the valley, providing early warning of Blackwater movements. Jim Taylor had established a secondary sniper position covering the western perimeter, while George Williams monitored the main road into town. Sheriff Martinez's voice came through next. "Main Street is quiet." Blackwater vehicles still at the Pine Lodge Inn. No movement for the past hour. "Understood," Elena acknowledged. Their preparations were as complete as circumstances allowed. A patchwork defense force, leveraging intimate knowledge of the terrain against Blackwater's superior numbers and equipment. The plan was simple in concept, though complex in execution. Gather definitive evidence of Blackwater's illegal operation, disrupt their communications infrastructure to prevent the cyber attack, and secure key personnel for federal authorities. Elena had no illusions about the difficulty of these objectives against trained operators, but they had one critical advantage. Stone and his people didn't expect organized resistance, certainly not from a collection of aging veterans led by a woman they believed to be a simple rancher. A flicker of movement at the compound's main entrance caught her attention. 3 black SUVs approached the gate, passing through security with minimal delay. As they parked near the center,